this is Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader of the House of Representatives. On September 8th, he announced the Democrat members of Congress who would be assigned to the Republican-led January 6th Select Subcommittee. That group includes Eric Swalwell, best known for cavorting with a Chinese spy, and the following clip.
Chris, so far, the evidence is uncontradicted that the president used taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election.
Classic. That group also includes Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas, who doesn't quite understand the role of law enforcement.
I want to be clear that, law enforcement isn't to prevent crime. Law enforcement solves crime, okay? That is what they're supposed to do. They are supposed to solve crimes, not necessarily prevent them from happening, per se.
There are some really stupid people in Congress, but no one more stupider than Jasmine Crockett. And I'm sure with Crockett and Fartwell on the case, that they're gonna get to the truth of what really happened on January 6th. And then there's Representative Jamie Raskin from Maryland, who we all know is one of the worst human beings in Congress.
When private comments made by federal employees are scrutinized for anti-Trump bias and they can lose their jobs because of it, then we've entered the realm not just of Vladimir Putin, but of Joseph Stalin.
Yes, Jamie. President Trump's firing of bureaucrats means that President Trump is just like Joseph Stalin. Although I think Stalin's victims lost more than their jobs.
The president and the MAGA followers cannot stop returning to the scene of their crime. That gives us the chance to educate new generations of Americans about the dangers of political authoritarianism and about the dangers of political and religious cults.
Calling your political rivals fascists and authoritarians is the exact type of rhetoric that got Charlie Kirk killed and inspired not one, but 2 assassination attempts against President Trump.
We would much prefer to be working on something positive, forward-looking, but they want to look back, and so we say fine.
Raskin and his fellow Democrats have been screeching about January 6th for 4.5 years, but now we want to move forward. Look, they're just upset that they've controlled the narrative, and now Republicans are going to take it back and have the last word on the matter.
So we'll also get the chance with the new Select Subcommittee to examine the constantly growing criminal records of all of the violent felons and cop beaters and white nationalists who Donald Trump pardoned and released onto our streets.
So according to Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, there are less than a dozen people pardoned for their participation in January 6th who were subsequently arrested and charged with other crimes. However, that list doesn't include anything about any of those people being white nationalists. But whatever, let's take a step back. Raskin is concerned that people with criminal records are being released back onto our streets, yet he's said nothing about Hugo Hernandez Mendez. Hernandez Mendez, who was living in the United States illegally, has been charged with the murder of 19-year-old Takara Thompson. According to reporting by ABC 7 News in Washington, D.C., Hernandez Mendez was pulled over for a DUI back in April of this year. He was hit with 9 different charges, including operating a motor vehicle while under the influence, having an open container of an alcoholic beverage in a vehicle, and driving a motor vehicle on a suspended license. But since the U.S. Park Police were the ones that pulled him over and arrested him, he was in federal custody. But instead of holding him in jail and contacting Immigration and Customs Enforcement, he was released. Here's Takara's mother, Carmen Thompson, after hearing that detail from a reporter.
I'm very disappointed, finding that out now, because we may not be here today if they did what they were supposed to do.
But even though this occurred in his state, Jamie Raskin and the Democrats aren't remotely concerned with an illegal alien with a criminal record being released back on the streets. Here's Carrie Pickett, a congressional reporter from the Washington Times.
Mr. Jeffries, Democrats right now are being pounded by Republicans about cities within your states, New York City, Baltimore, Los Angeles, about situations that are happening right now, whereas you're talking about a situation that happened 4 years ago where an unarmed protester was shot and killed by a Capitol Hill police officer with his own record.
What outlet are you from?
The Washington Times. So I'm curious here, hold on a second, why is it that Democrats don't want to hold that particular Capitol Hill police officer with any sort of accountability?
Look at their reaction. They think that Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed protester, deserved to be shot and killed. But let's continue.
As far as the cities in which the states that you're from, you don't want to deal with the crime that's actually going on in your own states. And Mr. Raskin, you're laughing.
Is there a question there? No, I'm laughing at you.
You're laughing, but a woman was just killed in your state, and you don't want to address that either.
And of course, Jamie Raskin doesn't care to talk about the murder of one of his constituents because it's not politically beneficial. And the fact that this is his response to a question about it, it's really sickening.
Yeah, I'm not going to address the ad hominem foolishness that was just articulated.
The definition of ad hominem is an argument or reaction directed against a person rather than the position they are maintaining. Washington Times reporter Carrie Pickett was asking why Democrats seem more concerned about what supposedly happened on January 6th than the violent crime that is occurring in the here and now. She wasn't attacking any of them personally. She was criticizing their actions, or lack thereof. In other words, Timu Obama doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
But what I will say very clearly is that we have, as Democrats, been very clear that we're going to support local law enforcement and do what is necessary to help them do their jobs, as opposed to doing what Republicans have done, which is to defund the police and rip away grant funding for local law enforcement.
You hear that, folks? It's not the Democrats who have been calling for defunding the police. No, it's the Republicans. Got it. So recently, the Democrats on the Appropriations Committee issued a press release titled, "House Republicans Defund Law Enforcement and Give Violent Criminals a Free Pass." This is where Jeffrey bases his claim that Republicans are ripping away grant funding for local law enforcement, and it's nonsense. According to that press release, the Republicans' extreme 2026 Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies funding bill defunds law enforcement and makes families, women, and children less safe. Then lists a bunch of grants that include Violence Against Women Act grants and juvenile justice grants. So, two things. First, these grants are not going to police departments. They're going to nonprofits. Second, these grants are not being ripped away. According to the Democrats, for 2026, the bill provides $79 billion in discretionary funding, a $2.1 billion or 2.6% cut below 2025. And that brings us to the final congressman assigned to the new select subcommittee on January 6th, Jared Moskowitz of Florida. Moskowitz fancies himself a centrist Democrat, but then says stupid shit like this.
Well, look, I've always backed the blue. Yeah, look, there was some of the folks on the far left that did this defund the police nonsense. It was short-lived, it disappeared. Republicans just defunded law enforcement in their big, beautiful bill. So both sides have dabbled in it. Obviously, there's a perception issue, which is why I think you could be clear here that we're tough on crime, we're serious on tackling crime.
So according to Moskowitz, who is from deep red Florida, cutting spending on grants going to nonprofits is defunding the police. Enjoy your last term in office, Congressman. And the claim by Democrats that Republicans are giving violent criminals a free pass is projection. And you know who got a free pass in a Democrat-run city? A career criminal by the name of DeCarlos Brown Jr. DeCarlos Brown has been arrested at least 14 times in the state of North Carolina and charged with everything from assault on a female, trespass in the second degree, violating parole, possession of a firearm by a felon, robbery with a dangerous weapon, breaking and entering, felony larceny, and so much more. And most recently, he was charged with the first-degree murder of Irina Zaruska, a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee who was riding a light rail train in Charlotte, North Carolina. Miss Zarutska was sitting in front of Brown, who sat up and stabbed her multiple times with a pocket knife. She died moments later, and Brown was arrested soon after. And he was a fair jumper, of course. He wasn't even supposed to be on the train. So add that to the list. But these Democrats like Jamie Raskin are more concerned about January 6ers being pardoned than career criminals and illegal aliens who, thanks to liberal judges and prosecutors, are allowed to move through the perpetually revolving door of the justice system. With that said, I would like to take a moment and acknowledge the late, great Charlie Kirk and give my deepest condolences to his wife Erica and his wonderful family. Charlie, you will be missed, and your message will never be forgotten. Thank you for watching, everyone.